As I go through these lessons, you'll probably hear my voice change quite a bit. I'm struggling with a cold, and I'm not recording these necessarily in order. It's another hazard of the Michigan winter. As I take a first pass through the materials, I read for three different groups. I will read, I'll call them voices, although usually you only talk about voices when you're writing. So I'll read in a student's voice. What would a student make of this if he or she were to read it? And then I'll read in a teacher's voice. And finally, there's a special kind of student that I will read in terms of. And this first group of examples comes from reading in the student voice. And in fact, this very first comment comes from the background from lesson 3.1, and the comment said the definition of simplest form using the smallest possible numbers doesn't seem clear. Part of the goal of this material was to make things a little bit less formal, but I thought sometimes you couldn't always avoid formality. What does the smallest numbers mean here? And so I left a comment to that effect. The second comment was on one of the problems. So if you look at page 3 of 3.1a, problem 16 says, think about counties in your area, where you live now or your hometown, and you're to pick a city and you're to do some calculations about densities. And my thought was that there wasn't quite enough direction on what the sentence should say. I thought the student could go down side tracks for detail, like saying that the population was undercounted, which a lot of urban areas assert, and so I thought maybe some guidance on what the sentence should look like, or maybe a few more adjectives in there to tell what the sentence would look like. The third comment I had from lesson 3.1 that was student-centered, or a third one anyway, came from one of the objectives. And so this is 3.1 part B. And in the gray box, one of the comments was calculate the population density from density ratios. I wasn't sure what density ratios was, so I thought students might not be sure what density ratios are even after they completed the lesson. I'm not expecting students to necessarily know what the objectives mean before the lesson starts, but my hope is that by the end that they would be able to understand it, and so I thought some cleanup of the language somewhere in the unit might be appropriate. So basically, when I'm reading in what I've called the student voice, are tasks and instructions clear? Are objectives clear? And just does it make sense from a student point of view? So you'll have the lessons from 3.2 in front of you, and I'd like you to find 2 or more places for a student-centered comment like the ones above. You'll get a few minutes to do that, and then a few less minutes to share that with a partner, and we'll end this part with a brief whole group discussion.